Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Rebecca Berger. This is Justice for All, where you get to hear from legal professionals in the surrounding area. Tonight, we're talking to Jeralyn Lawrence from Lawrence Law. Jeralyn, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Rebecca.
I am so excited to have you. You are such a busy woman.
Well, thanks. It's been busy.
It is busy. So you have your own family law practice, Lawrence Law, correct?
I do.
And then you, in addition to that, you are currently the New Jersey State Bar president, correct?
I am.
So I want to know when do you sleep?
Not too much.
I don't think so, because you also have a family.
Not very often, but enough.
You have a family as well, so you're juggling many roles here, and doing so successfully, which is awesome. So, in terms of your family law practice, you've now been on your own and opened your own firm in what year again? 2016?
2019. January 1st, 2019, we opened our doors.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And it seems like everything's going well, correct?
Yes, we weathered the pandemic, which hit us, shortly after we opened our doors, which was terrifying. But it's going really well. My entire team left my prior firm and came with me, and we started Lawrence Law, and we've grown since then. But it's really, I have a wonderful village here, so I'm very lucky.
Which is all you can ask for. You've always been in family law, correct?
Always.
So what made you want to be in the field of family law?
So I always thought I would be a prosecutor. I knew very early on that I wanted to be a lawyer. My father is a retired juvenile detective, so I've talked law with him for as long as I can remember. And so I thought for sure I would be a prosecutor. I had worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office. I did an internship at the Passaic County Prosecutor's Office. I thought I would work in the domestic violence unit after having watched the movie The Burning Bed, where Farrah Fawcett was a victim of domestic violence and killed her husband. And I had no idea that that even existed in our world. So I was going to be a prosecutor. I was going to specialize in domestic violence cases. But then in law school, I got involved in the family law clinic, and I had the opportunity to be in court arguing motions, and I really just fell in love with that practice area. And I certainly, unfortunately, have my fill of domestic violence cases in this realm, as you know, practicing the same area. But now it's from a family law standpoint, as opposed to a criminal prosecution or defense.
And they are really difficult cases to handle. And, we were talking before we came on air, the idea that people don't really necessarily understand sometimes the frame of mind of a domestic violence victim.
Absolutely. Well, I've shared this in some interviews. I am a victim of domestic violence. I was married to a man that was abusive. And so I've gone through that cycle many times. And looking back, you do ask yourself, why did you stay? But the cycle is very real, and the honeymoon phase sometimes, takes over and you forget. But it wasn't until my daughter was born, and at 8 weeks old, I had the strength to get a restraining order and get a divorce and try to heal from that. But it's part of my mission, part of my goal is to really champion the prevention of domestic violence.
And, it's something, first of all, congrats to you for being able to do that, because that is incredibly difficult. By the time someone, I know from my experiences, by the time someone gets that temporary restraining order, this has been going on a long time. To find the strength to even get that temporary restraining order, to me, is such a feat. And one of the things I always say to my clients who have, I tell them how brave they are, because it really is difficult.
because most, as you know, most true victims of domestic violence know in their heart that a piece of paper may very well not protect them. So it is
Yeah.
an enormous act of bravery to go and get that, go and get that restraining order.
Agreed. I tell them it's a piece of paper until you do something with it. So, congrats to you. But for you then to make it your mission in life and your life's work to really, focus on domestic violence and also, all the other aspects of family law, which helps give you such a basis for practicing in this field, which can be very difficult sometimes.
It is not an easy field, and it seems to be getting harder and not easier.
And we were also talking about, the idea that maybe some clients or some people may be suffering more now after the pandemic, not just due to financial issues, but also some mental health issues that people, are trying to adjust to all of the change that had gone on in such a short period of time.
I agree. I think people are suffering. I think people's patience is thinner than it's ever been. Their expectations are harder to meet than ever before. The pace of our practice is not sustainable. While I love technology and I love Zoom, and I'm a huge proponent of finding that balance between Zoom and in person, just because of the stress relief that it brings, I think, in our life of not having to worry about travel and waiting. I think it has created an expectation of almost instant messaging. I think people are sitting in front of their computers or on their cell phones and will shoot off a message and almost expect an instantaneous reply and become frustrated if they're not getting a reply within the hour or so. People pay us to think, and they're going to want us to think about their message and read it and digest it. But I think there's just a level of frustration now coming out of the pandemic that I've never seen before.
And I also think it's, if we're thinking back, like, how much time do we really focus on the idea of the mentality of someone going through a divorce? So you have this instantaneous method of contacting your divorce attorney, which, again, you're not going to call your doctor at 1 o'clock in the morning. So similarly,
Right.
you shouldn't do that. But, that instantaneous mixed with the process and the mental process you have to go through and the grief you're going through, the death of a relationship.
It's true. And add that stress to the fact that we have the highest level, or almost the highest level, of judicial vacancies that we've ever had in the state, at 65 judicial vacancies with 11 retirements looming. You have divorce trials suspended throughout the state, depending on the county. So if you fall within that category that you are unable to resolve your case and you need a judge to weigh in on it, you are years away from having your case decided. And so you try to explain that to the client, that access to justice is being denied across the state because of the amount of judicial vacancies and the governor and the legislature not being able to fill these vacancies. It's hard for them to understand. It's hard for them to accept that. So that's something we've been trying to work on at the state bar, is really calling the attention to the governor and the legislature to fill these vacancies so that New Jerseyans have access to justice and can have their day in court.
And it's amazing you have that ability because, again, you're in touch every day with this field to understand the impact of those lack of judicial vacancies, like to have those judicial vacancies and how it's really spiraling into what you do every single day.
Yeah, we used to say it was at crisis level. Now I call it catastrophic levels. The Chief Justice has told us that the judiciary can only function properly with a maximum of 30 judicial vacancies. We are double that plus. So we have judges that are working too hard. They are stretched too thin. They are doing triage every day. And it's unfair to them. It's unfair to the litigants. It's unfair to the lawyers. So it's a problem that we need to address.
What's also interesting is you coupled that with what occurred during the pandemic, which also put cases behind because we weren't in the courtrooms and, processes were different during that time frame.
Right, but courts never shut down, and the court pivoted very early to virtual proceedings. So that's what some of the members of the legislature think, is that, oh, well, court really wasn't working during the pandemic, so therefore filling these judicial vacancies was not a priority. But that's just not accurate. The court never stopped working. We were hearing motions, they were conferencing cases. So, they never stopped. Absolutely a backlog created just by the virtue of the amount of volume that they had and just not enough judges being able to dispense justice. But as you know, our judges worked extremely hard and continue to work hard before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and now. They're being asked to do too much, and they're just overworked and with no help in sight. So it's got to be hard right now to be a sitting judge.
So what do you think is the most important thing you can do as the State Bar President in order to help the situation? Because, the State Bar Association does have a lot of influence, and, again, judicial can't work without, the bar. They work together a lot. So what do you think you can do in your presidency to help the issue?
Continue to talk about it, continue to do interviews just like this, and speak about it, write opinions, editorials in the newspaper. 21 counties across our state all joined together to sign a resolution. The 21 county bars signed a resolution along with the New Jersey State Bar Association. 8 affinity bars signed along on that resolution, urging the governor and the legislature to act. So just continue to work statewide with our 21 counties and also affinity bars. Continue meeting with the governor's office, members of the legislature, members of the press, to call the attention to what life is like, that this is really impacting families, it's impacting children. Couples are stuck together in homes where, there's War of the Roses type things happening right in front of the children. There are people that want to relocate out of the state because they have a job waiting in a different state and they're unable to do that. There are still children stuck in school district battles. What is the proper school district for them? Because one parent lives in one school district and the other parent lives in another one. So you have them, a child starting in one school district, and once a judge can finally hear the matter, perhaps they should be in a different school district. So just the trickle down effect is hurting children. And so we just need to tell those stories. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put real people, real faces on the story. The Star Ledger recently did an article, and one litigant was interviewed, and they said, when a divorce lasts longer than your marriage, wow, the judiciary is non-existent. And so that's the message we've been trying to drive home.
And that's so hard to explain to a client, to try to explain to them, why do you have so many different judges that may be involved in the case? Because they may go through 5 different judges as they're moving through the county. And then you realize that there's not going to be a trial to end this anytime soon because there isn't enough judges to actually help move this along, and the judges are working so hard. And I want to talk to you a little bit further about this after the commercial break. This is Justice for All. I'm Rebecca Berger. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Aloha! Joe Silva here with Kukua Technologies. I'm excited to see you on Tuesdays on Morning Coffee for our tech tips.
Let's face it, lawyers get a bad rap. I'm Erin Brucey, host of Legal Breakdown, where we dissect legal topics for the everyday viewer, with a mix of interesting guests to talk about current events and hot legal topics. Let's work together to make the law accessible and relevant to everyone. Catch us every week on RVN Television.
Welcome back. This is Justice for All, and we're talking to Jeralyn Lawrence. Jeralyn, before we went to commercial break, we were talking about the impact of all the judicial vacancies and how that's impacting litigants in, family law, not just divorces, but also custody cases, people who aren't married, who may be stuck in a situation, as the example you had given, relocation cases. Maybe somebody needs to move somewhere else and they can, or they need their child to go to a different school and they can't get in front of a judge to do that. So do you think this is the worst crisis we've ever had in New Jersey with respect to this issue, correct?
I think so. I mean, our domestic violence case backlog has increased 10 times. Landlord-tenant cases are a total mess. Civil trials are backlogged. Criminal defendants are languishing in jail without having an opportunity to be heard. So I think it's probably the worst it's ever been.
Do you think that they will nominate any judges anytime soon, more judges?
Well, we're fortunate enough that they just nominated and confirmed and swore in 2 justices to the Supreme Court. But for this week, our crown jewel of the Supreme Court of New Jersey was, I think it was 43% vacant, which is absurd. But we just confirmed 2, so there remains 1 vacancy on the Supreme Court. With regard to the Superior Court, the 65 vacancies that I mentioned with 11 retirements looming, they are just not, the governor is just not nominating enough people. Through the State Bar, we're able to, through a compact, we review candidates, and we've reviewed some. There's no delay from our perspective, but we're just not getting enough candidates to review. So, he's got to nominate a lot more for the Senate to confirm.
And usually the judges, when they begin in a county, begin typically in the family unit, because it is one of those dockets that has so many aspects and so many things going on all at once.
That's right.
So in your practice, what would you say has been probably one of the most difficult issues you've had in dealing with in family law?
Well, custody and parenting time, relocation, those are the hardest issues to compromise on. If somebody wants to relocate, but doing this, I've seen it all. You see people go through a very contentious divorce, and they reconcile and get remarried. You've seen it all. I've had very horrific situations. I've had a client murder his son and then commit suicide.
Wow.
I've had a client have his infant son kidnapped and taken to Greece, and where my entire summer was spent trying to get the baby back, and thankfully he came back. So it's just very broad as to what can come across a family lawyer's desk. Thankfully, most people are able to settle their case. Most people want to resolve their case and find a way to compromise. So statistically speaking, that's happening. But you certainly do have those cases that require a judge's determination or intervention.
Well, you're also trained as a collaborative divorce lawyer. Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
So that's just a process that a party can elect or parties elect to get divorced. The main goal of every divorce is to reach a marital settlement agreement, and most people are able to do that. Some do that by way of their lawyers just talking. Some do that by pulling a mediator into their case who's a neutral third party that helps facilitate the negotiations. Or you can agree to a collaborative process where everybody agrees to settle their case and they sign a contract called the participation agreement where they commit themselves to settling the case. And that's the collaborative process. It's a wonderful process. It's been on the books in New Jersey since right around the time we changed the alimony laws. I think that was September 10th, 2014, that the collaborative law statute was enacted here. But it's been practiced worldwide. It's been practiced across our country and certainly is here in New Jersey. And it's a wonderful alternative for people who are really committed to settling their case.
And have you seen it be really successful?
I think it's extremely successful. But again, two people control how long a case takes and how much it costs. And that's the parties to the case. So if you have parties that are willing to settle, that want to dig deep and compromise and not take their toys and leave the sandbox when things get hard, which they may, and always stay true to their commitment to settlement, I think collaborative is a wonderful process to do that.
What do you think are some of the most common questions you're asked in family law?
Some of the most common questions are abandonment. Can they be held liable if they leave the house for something called abandonment? I say that there's no such thing. People will call and say, I want to file for legal separation. I have to tell them there's no such thing. Some people will call and say, I've been cheated on, or some other kind of fault has occurred in their marriage and they want justice and they want vindication or vengeance. So that's always a difficult conversation to explain to them that fault in family law really doesn't matter. Absent some egregious circumstance, the judge is not going to get involved in fault as why you're getting married or why you're getting divorced. So judges don't do a do-over of your marriage. And generally speaking, the court's not going to get involved in any fault-based reason as to why you're getting divorced. That nobody's going to pay any more, get any less because they are cheating or some other fault accusation. So those are probably the top misconceptions and myths or legends that I have to try to dispel.
What do you think is the most rewarding case that you've handled in your career?
The most rewarding cases to me are the people that come to me to do a consultation and they can barely get through the consultation. It's either they're sobbing or they're just so broken that they can't even imagine what that next moment, that next minute, that next day of their life is going to be. And by the time the case is over, or by the time the next holiday or something comes around, I get a card or a note just telling me how happy they are, that they've seized this opportunity that was presented to them, meaning the end of the relationship or the end of the marriage, and chose to rewrite their chapter or their journey in a different way. And while they at first may not have seen it as an opportunity, they've now embraced it as an opportunity and are happy and are living for themselves or for their kids or a combination of both, or they're remarried. So that to me is the most rewarding kind of case.
And it's so amazing to see someone who's doing well at the end of the day after seeing them go through such a difficult time. And right now you have about 6 more months left on your term as the president of the New Jersey State Bar. What do you want to accomplish during that time?
So much. There's so much to accomplish. So at the beginning of my presidency, we started what's called the Putting Lawyers First Task Force. And that's a presidential initiative where we're studying this year our ethics and our fee arbitration systems. We're really taking a look at all areas that stress lawyers out. Lawyers are very depressed and anxious, and most of us are not getting treatment for that. And we have plenty of programs out there, and they're wonderful programs that help us deal with our stress, such as mindfulness or wellness initiatives. But we want to focus on what are the causes of the stress, what's causing lawyers to be so stressed out. And some of those things are our ethics and fee arbitration processes. The ethics system is supposed to protect the public, not punish lawyers. And we feel like the ethics system has lost its way. Lawyers are being disbarred, where we argue that they should not be disbarred. They've made a mistake. So we want to take a look at that. We want to take a look at the law surrounding lawyers getting paid in cases, make it easier for them to get paid, make it easier for lawyers to get out of cases when they don't want to be in cases anymore. Right now, the law is very stringent on if a lawyer is defamed or receives a negative online review, you're very limited as to how a lawyer could respond to that. So we want to look at that law and give the lawyer an equal opportunity to respond to that review. We want to review the law surrounding malpractice. Right now, anybody can sign an affidavit of merit against a lawyer. A civil lawyer can sign an affidavit of merit against a family lawyer, and I respectfully submit that a civil lawyer has no idea what a family lawyer does. Doctors don't have that. Doctors, you have to have a specialty to be able to, like a cardiologist can allege that a cardiologist committed malpractice. For us, anybody can allege that. So we want to take another look at affidavits of merit. So we want to look at any area that impacts lawyers. We want to put lawyers first because we never put ourselves first. The court comes first, clients come first, our firm comes first. And we're paying a heavy price for that. Lawyers, like I said, are depressed and anxious. So we have to take a hard look at some of these rules and these laws and effectuate change.
Sounds
So
like
I'd like to accomplish that.
you've got a lot on your plate going on for the next 6 months and such a busy practice. If someone wanted to contact you, reach out to you and return your services, speak to you, how would they do so?
Well, thank you. So you can find me on the web. My website is www.lawfirm.com, or my phone number is 908-645-1000.
Jeralyn, I want to thank you for your time and speaking with me tonight. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for having me. It's really been my privilege and pleasure to be here.
This is Justice for All. I'm Rebecca Berger. We'll be back next week.